I am really sorry, but this video won't be perfectly in focus because I'm filming this alone. Nobody's helping me, so yeah, let's just do it. Oh, you're so cute. I love you. Okay, anyway. Hello, my name is Rachel, and you might be wondering, why should I care about this video? And honestly, you tell me. You clicked on this video. You might know me, maybe you accidentally clicked on this, or maybe you also have ADHD and you just want somebody to relate to. The point of this video is to kind of share my story and try to kind of find a community through this, because I felt pretty alone throughout this whole journey in my life, and it's only just beginning. So if you want, stick around and you can listen to my story and my experience with burnout and stress, and yeah, let's talk about it. So this year in 2021, at the age of 20, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I started wondering if I had ADHD when one of my tutors in high school actually asked me if I had ADHD, and I was like, no, at least not that I know of. And he was like, I think you should get tested. And I was like, me? Because I'm not like the smartest person in the world by any means, but there are stereotypes about what ADHD looks like, even though, spoiler alert, there is no look. But you know, when people talk about ADHD, they usually describe it as, you know, a child being very hyperactive. They can't sit still, they can't focus. And while that may be true for a certain group of people, that's certainly not how it looks in everybody, and it definitely manifests differently within adults with this disorder. I started doing my research about ADHD, how it presents itself in people, and I started seeing that suddenly it answered a lot of questions in my life. I know everybody talks about how they've always, you know, like felt different and like they were always like an outsider. You know, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I was just like that too, but I did always feel like there was something that just didn't click in my head throughout my life. And also just within the Asian American community, or the Asian community in general, I don't think that ADHD is really talked about that often. And I don't really know many other Asian people who are open about having this disorder. But I think a lot of that also comes from not being really educated about what it looks like. You know, I don't really blame anybody for that, because how can you know what to look for when you don't even know that it can look different in everyone? Also, another thing I'd like to add is that I feel like ADHD has been downplayed a lot, because like I said before, there are a lot of stereotypes about it, and in an era where short form content and like TikTok and Instagram, where you scroll through, see something new every 2 seconds, you can't really blame this generation for having a short attention span when everything was created for a short attention span. And I certainly do believe that that plays a lot into how long people can focus, what they focus on, and also ADHD. So I do think that it's not really taken that seriously, because if you tell somebody that you have ADHD, they'll say, oh yeah, I most likely have it too, you know, I can barely focus. And I'm sure a lot of people do have undiagnosed ADHD. It's certainly a privilege to be able to go through that process and figure it out. But it's kind of like that thing where, you know how some people who may just be a stickler for like a clean room or a clean area, or somebody who might just be extra hygiene conscious may say, oh, I have OCD, I can't have a dirty room or something like that. But that just downplays what OCD really is, which is something that really is debilitating for a lot of people. And I think that there's a parallel in that argument and with ADHD, and how downplayed it is because of how much people, I don't really know how to describe it. I just feel like it's so normalized to say that everybody has it, that people don't really get how debilitating it is. And I certainly can't speak for everybody, so I'm just gonna speak for me. And something that I went through this year was, oh wow, this year and last year, I went through terrible burnout before I was diagnosed. And a large part of it, you know, had to do with being in Korea with my family during COVID. I was doing school online, so I was able to, you know, be there, but you know, there's a whole time difference. So in Korea at night, I had Zoom for school, and during the day I had to function. So I was pretty much always awake, I was always tired, constantly stressed, and I had undiagnosed ADHD, which I cannot stress enough how debilitating it is. I didn't know that neurotypical people don't hear 50 songs playing in their head whenever they're trying to take a test, or I didn't know that anybody could actually silence their brain if they wanted to. I didn't know that focusing is supposed to be easier than it was for me. In a lot of ways, it's ruined my self-esteem and my relationship with myself and others, especially with friendships, because one part of ADHD is not having object permanence, which is essentially when, you know, I have this cup right here, but if I place it out of the frame, you know, you still know it's there, but with ADHD, it's much easier to forget that it's even there if you don't see it. So it's like out of sight, out of mind. And unfortunately, that applies a lot to how I interact with my friends. I love my friends and I care about them so much, but if I don't see them every day or anything like that, I just won't really think about hitting them up until a few months later, and I'll be like, oh yeah. And generally I'm a loner these days because I've become more introverted and I like spending time with myself, so my friendships have definitely suffered a lot in that aspect, and I think it's really unfortunate because I want to be a good friend and I try to be, but it's just hard sometimes to remember to message people back or to message them at all when I forget things so easily. And that's another thing that sucks. Oh my gosh. Since ADHD is executive dysfunction, I have a terrible time remembering things. I forget absolutely everything, which is why I make reminders for pretty much everything I do in my life and what I have to do daily. I just realized that I went on a tangent and I forgot to talk about my depression and burnout. But essentially anyway, while I was in Korea, I was facing a lot of stress and I was having a really hard time focusing. I've always had a really hard time focusing, but I kind of thought that that was normal, but turns out it's not. For a few months, I felt my stomach start to hurt really bad. It's like the feeling of cramps, but 50 times worse. And I already have terrible cramps. So essentially, whenever I would eat anything or feel a bit stressed, I started feeling as if my stomach was getting stabbed with knives. I put off going to the doctor for a while. I just chalked it up to thinking it was cramps, or I just thought it would go away. But I went to the doctor. The doctor said that I might have acute gastritis. And essentially what gastritis is inflammation in the stomach. And acute gastritis, it's for a short time. So I got medicine, I took it after every meal. I also wasn't allowed to drink coffee, no salt, and no alcohol, but I already don't drink, so it was fine. But the other two, extremely hard. Oh my goodness, everything I ate just ruined my stomach. So I was taking medicine for a few weeks every single day after every meal. It was very tedious, but I wanted to get better. However, it wasn't getting better, so I had to go back to the doctor. The doctor found it strange that I wasn't getting better at all, and so they decided to do an endoscopy, which is when they put a tube with the camera down your stomach. I was asleep during the process. Afterwards, the doctor called me in and he showed me like the picture of the inside of my stomach, and there was a lot of blood. He told me that this was the worst case of gastritis that he had ever seen in all his years of practicing as a doctor. He said that I had chronic gastritis, so long-term, and my inner stomach lining, the acids, everything was ruined. I had internal bleeding, and I was on my way to getting an ulcer if I didn't get better. The doctor said that it was caused by stress. Now, side note, I would just like to say that I didn't really take as good care of my body as I should have because, you know, I'm still young and I didn't think that I had much to worry about. But through this experience, I realized it doesn't matter what age you are. If you're not taking care of your body, you're not invincible. I did not realize how much the mind and body were linked and how much stress can physically affect the body until I personally went through it. And I'm somebody who hasn't experienced like a ton of crazy health issues in her life. This was a shock to me, but also not a huge shock because I was constantly stressed for about a year. So for that year, I had to take medicine after every single meal. Many days I couldn't even walk. I couldn't get out of bed. It was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. Now, how that relates to ADHD is, I believe the undiagnosed ADHD was a huge factor in why I was so stressed because I didn't know for sure if I had it. And I had wanted to get tested for a while, especially after that time in high school when my tutor asked me if I had ADHD and told me to get tested. I told my parents and we hit up my primary care doctor, and that doctor refused to give me a test. He said that just by looking at me, he knew that I didn't have it because I'm a reader, I like writing, I'm smart enough, so I didn't get the help I needed. And to this day, I hold resentment against him for that because possibly all of this could have been avoided if he had just listened to me. Thankfully, after I came back to America from Korea, I got tested. Of course, I was told I have ADHD, got meds, got the help I needed. Life got a lot better, sort of. It was manageable until college started again. And I realized quickly I didn't know how to study in a different way that I had never tried before, because now I know that I have ADHD, but I was never taught or told how to function, how to study in a different way with this disorder. Not only that, but my gastritis wasn't getting better, and every time it did slightly get better, every time I would get a bit stressed, even just a little bit, my gastritis would flare up and I would feel so much pain again. And to this day, whenever I get a bit stressed or tired, I still feel it, and I don't think that it'll go away for a long time. So I decided to do a lot of research, and I found Twitter communities of people who have lived with ADHD or were diagnosed later in their life and their experiences, and I felt so heard. Even though I never directly participated in these Twitter threads, I would read about people's experiences and find myself directly relating to them, and it was a really, really nice feeling. Through that, I also came to research on my own, and through that, I also learned that a lot of people with ADHD are first diagnosed with depression and anxiety, both of which I was also diagnosed with in therapy. There's a lot of breaking down of the self-esteem when you grow up with ADHD and you don't know that you have it, and you just know that something's wrong, but you don't know what. And so essentially now I'm dealing with the grief of the life that I could have had. All the things I could have done if I had just gotten the help I needed way earlier in my life. I could have made better friendships, I could have done better on my tests, I could have been more social, I could have learned how to study properly if I had just known, if somebody had just listened to me and I didn't have to wait to be an adult to figure this out on my own. And I felt this a lot when I started this semester of college. My self-esteem was just down in the dumps, and I was going through a lot, and I also didn't realize how much of a mental toll a physical condition of gastritis could have on me. But that's a whole other topic. So going through all of that and finding my new identity was very difficult for me. And you know, my family's not here with me. I was alone a lot and I found myself isolating myself, and that's the worst thing you can do when you are facing burnout. My burnout was so bad, you guys. For about a week and a half, I could not get out of bed. I just didn't leave my house. I couldn't. I don't know how to describe it, but I just could not. I just didn't have any will to live, to do anything. My body was so weak. I just couldn't. I was crying every day. And I was missing all of my classes, and knowing that I was screwing things up for myself made the depression and anxiety and everything even worse. And there's this TED Talk. The psychologist was talking about burnout, and she was saying how burnout is when you wake up every day and you have this stressor and you feel a lot of dread and you really, really don't want to do that thing, but you still go and do it anyway. You still are able to show up. But when you have that same stressor and you can't get out of bed, you can't actually do the thing, that's far past burnout. That's not even burnout. It's in a whole category of its own, and that's so far beyond the point of needing help. And I found this all out very recently after I got through it. And so honestly, it amazes me how I even got through something that was even worse than burnout. Because even being burnt out, when you realize you're burnt out, it's already when it's too late, I feel like. It's already when you are so in the dumps that you realize, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Thankfully, I've been going to therapy. It's been amazing, but I still, I'm still dealing with this new identity, health crisis that I went through, the aftermath of burnout, just everything like that. And so I'm making this video to document my journey, to share my experience in figuring myself out as an adult with ADHD. I would absolutely love to hear any of y'all's thoughts. You can DM me or leave it in the comments. Subscribe if you want to hear me ramble. As you can probably tell, I have a lot of thoughts and I have a lot of opinions. So if you want to hear me talk about anything else, you can just leave any topic in the comments. I just really want to be able to find a community through this, and it doesn't even have to be a community of just people with ADHD, but anybody who's been through burnout, depression, anxiety, anybody who is a burnout college student, somebody who is going through chronic health issues, just anybody who understands even a portion of what I just talked about. I would love to talk to you. I would love to hear your thoughts and your own experiences. So subscribe if you're down to hear me talk and have conversations. Thank you so much for giving me your time of day, and I really look forward to hearing any of y'all's responses. Thank you.